And welcome everyone to this special edition broadcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here today with foundational astrologer Linda Byrd. Linda has been practicing astrology for over 20 years. She is the president of NCGR, which is the National Council of Geocosmic Research. And she is also an upcoming guide for our Inner Circle membership group. And we're here today to revisit some of the topics that Linda brought up during the 2020 forecast event that we hosted back in January. And some of the themes that Linda identified back then in January, before so much of our storyline had begun unfolding, because they are so even more relevant now and even more important for us to continue remembering. So these are themes around revolution to evolution, awakening to a new reality, and also a warning that she gave, which was around not feeding fear. So Linda, welcome. It's so great to be here with you again. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with this idea. I mean, there's such a revolutionary energy happening right now in this country and around the world. And so what were you looking at when you saw revolution to evolution as a theme for 2020? And how do you see that continuing to mature as we go throughout the year?
As far as something specific, it's probably just the Saturn-Pluto thing, because what we're beginning to see in other parts of the world was a literal revolution. I didn't think it was going to be literal here quite so much, but we knew that the old ways had to break down for something better to come from it. So, the reason I chose revolution to evolution is because when we're in the revolutionary stage of it, it can be very scary. So if we hold on to the idea or the vision that we have to go through this stage in order to evolve, then it gives us something on the other side, something to hold on to, you might say, so that we don't get caught in the, oh my God,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And from a metaphysical perspective, because I know that you bring so much of that into your work, into your life. It's who you are. How I love what you just said about, there's a lot of merit in recognizing that it's an essential part of the process, right?
Mhm.
As we're changing.
Right.
How do you work with it personally? Like, how do you work with the unrest, the unknown, the chaotic things that are happening?
Well, I try to spend time in nature and also to meditate and to kind of hold on to the um, energy of this is all purposeful. And as hard as it is for people to be going through the hard times they are, in some ways, um, I look at this pandemic as really quite brilliant. It's a scary, terrible thing, but it stopped the world in its tracks, and nothing has done that before except for a world war. So when this happened, um, it it I realized I was brushing my teeth on the second day of the lockdown, and I realized, oh my God, this isn't an awakening to a new reality. We did life changed very quickly. But I also realized I had running water, I had electricity, a roof over my head, food in the cupboards, and I thought I just was overcome with gratitude because a lot of us were looking at this whole Saturn Pluto conjunction and it could have been something so much worse. And so in some ways I look at this as maybe humanity is evolving faster than, I mean, my hope is that we wake up and we start evolving and moving with the energy in a conscious way, so that we don't have to have harder lessons. And so the pandemic to me felt like it was a horrible thing, and yet relatively gentle in the scale of what could have been in a way. And even the revolution part that we're going through now, yes, there was rioting and looting at the very beginning, but it's evolved into more peaceful protesting. And I did a webinar for a group in Vancouver last Friday, and they said, "Are you going to the rally?" And I like the word rally better because it's like rallying behind a cause. And and all these things that have been going on for so long, these horrible inequities, already we're seeing things changing. People are, uh, you know, moving funds from the police, or not totally, but taking funds from the policing to community things. And we're seeing concrete changing really fast. So that gives me hope that because I believe that the planets are conscious, they want the best for us and so forth, but they can be strict and say, look, you got to wake up. And, I don't want to have to hit you harder and harder, but so that if we're paying attention as a collective, as humanity, and we do start to evolve quickly, then I think that we can avoid some of the things that could happen because the years lined up for, who knows. But my hope is that if we can become conscious and to look at the progress we're making, and focus on the positivity of what's going on without ignoring or negating the suffering, because clearly that is happening. Um, I believe that we are part of the solution, that we live in a quantum universe, and our energy of positivity and seeing the light, the world we want to create, um, I think that's adding to the morphic field and a quicker resolution to the evolution, you might say.
Hmm.
Anyway,
And Linda, are you finding that you have evidence of that in your life, like in your conversations with people? Do you feel like people around you are waking up at a faster pace, or getting involved or engaged more than they would have before? Are you seeing that in your reality?
yes. I, and it could be because you attract people like you, so that I have a little narrow
Right.
group, but yeah, people are waking up I think, very fast, because we're waking up to the fact that we're not just a little 3D body. We are so much more than this. We have a higher consciousness that is helping us if we pay attention. Um, and I think that people are becoming more um, connected, or more validating of their bigger selves, that we're being asked to step out in a bigger way. Um, and I mean, personally, it's been really hard. Just to be on your program has been a real challenge to just step into this role, because it brings up all my insecurities of I'm not good enough, and all those other people are, and all these other things. And even as late as last night, I was having to really kind of try to study and everything. But like I said, I'm not a mundane astrologer. And I was talking to a friend, and he said, just be you, you know. And I
Yes.
thought,
Wise, wise friend.
yeah. And I thought, oh, thank you, because that's who I am. I can't be other people, and I can't compare myself to other people. I just have to bring my piece of the puzzle. That's, you know.
That's it. I mean, and that's what we know from astrology is actually every person is holding a unique piece of the puzzle. And when we stop censoring ourselves and blocking ourselves and shaming ourselves and all the things that we do as humans to varying degrees, right?
Right.
We give the gift of that authentic blueprint, which contributes to the beauty of the whole. And again, I feel like astrology just like astrology sings this,
Mm-hmm.
look, everybody's unique, everybody has this chart, and yet we're all together in it. It's this beauty in our differences and in our sameness, and
Exactly.
totally. It's
Exactly.
I love when I see the members on my team being like, "Oh, my fellow Scorpio sister," or "Oh, my," it's finding those connection points that we do have in
Mm-hmm.
common. And so I'm very glad that your friend said that to you because it's exactly what I would have said. Linda, just
Thank
be
you.
you because you're amazing and we love you.
Thank you. Well,
Okay.
I just wanted to say one thing with
Yeah.
that. It's kind of like we're all, because we live in a frequency, right? I call it energy soup.
Yeah.
And that we all bring our own note to the symphony of life because, you know,
You
it's a
do.
frequency. So,
Totally. And symphonies have those moments of tension and then the like softness and then the quiet and then all of that makes it so incredible. So, you said something earlier that I'd love to go back to because I asked Rick Levine this question last week. It just like I just needed to ask him, and it was, do you believe that the universe is benevolent? And so
mhm.
I would love to hear your answer to that because you said something that made me think of it.
Yes, I do. I definitely believe that the universe is benevolent. And I do believe that the planets are conscious, and they want the best for us. I think I shared this the last time we talked, but I had this experience with the Stargate where I don't know if you want me to share the story again, um, but I experienced the feeling and the love from the planets, and it was profound. It changed my life. And it was not just that they love us, but I love them. It was kind of this whole thing about we're all one, and just as we as individual humans are different, but we all have something to offer. I think that the whole the universe is like that. It's we all contribute. So yes, I would definitely say that I believe the universe is benevolent. Yes.
And so when there's things happening that don't seem benevolent, like there's a lot of things happening right now, how do you like rectify that within yourself?
It's not necessarily easy because you can feel the distress and the what's going on, but I have to believe that everything happens for a reason, and it's hard to justify, people who are getting sick and losing loved ones and lost their jobs and all these things that are really um, horrible. Um, and yet, I have to hold on to that everything, there's a higher purpose for all of this. And yeah, it's hard to, from the 3D humanness to really have to try to figure it out. It's kind of like I have to turn it over and say, I don't understand this, but I have to be in a trusting place
Mm,
that there's a reason.
mm.
So,
Okay, so one of the other things that you were very clear about during the 2020 forecast event was the consequences, I think. Just warning about some of the consequences of feeding the energy of fear. So can we talk about that a little bit and why you feel that's so important to highlight?
mhm. Well, I believe that like attracts like. And so whatever you're focusing on, then you attract that. So on a personal level, when you're fearful, and I think we've all had this experience, when we're fearful, especially if I'm afraid of this, then, oh my goodness, we get an opportunity to deal with that because we have a focus there. I think, uh, I don't know who said this. Somebody said Carl Jung, but where your focus, where let's see, I just lost it. Anyway, it's kind of like where your energy is, then that's where the flow is. And so it's so on a personal level, it's not helpful to live in a fearful place because we are choosing every moment how we want that moment to be. And so we could choose to be fearful or, or by default fall into fear, or we can consciously choose to something different, to be holding trust that whatever it is, it's going to be okay. So, and then on the global level, when we're fearful, we feed the morphic field. We feed the fear that affects everybody else. And so when we can hold a higher vibration of love and gratitude and joy and the higher vibrations, then we're contributing that to the morphic field instead of the lower vibrations of fear. And so I think it's really, really important. And
Essential,
it gives
really.
us some control as to what we do. I mean,
Right.
we can control ourselves. We can't control anything else around us.
You know, someone very dear to me has a strong dislike for someone in a political position. Um, and every time I speak to him, he has to assert how much he hates this person
Mm-hmm,
and how much there is to fear because of this person's position.
mm-hmm,
And I keep saying, if you feel that way, you realize you're strengthening that. You're
mm-hmm.
actually feeding it. You're actually contributing to the very thing that you don't want to experience.
Exactly.
And it's hard though, because I think people find themselves in this loop and it's hard to pull the attention away and I think probably believe, he probably thinks, oh yeah, that's real cute what Amanda's saying, but you know,
Mm-hmm,
but here's the reality. The reality is this is what's happening. And
mm-hmm,
I'm saying, well, but there could be another reality, and as long as you're feeding that, it's going to keep happening. You
mm-hmm.
know, so
No,
it's an
we're
interesting conversation to have with people.
exactly because we have. I mean, it's hard to not be upset by this particular person because every day there's some new thing, and it's hard to not get sucked into that. But but if you can kind of get into the more observer place and look at it from everything happens, that person is actually serving a very powerful position because he's like really bringing out the shadow and all the dark and the dare I say evil, but just this all the corruption and all the I you know all the things that this particular person that seems to be his job. And so if we didn't have that, I mean he's serving a powerful position, but it's very difficult to not get caught in the oh my God, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's true with everything happening. It's not, I just brought that as an example, but it's like, all these things that we're seeing, and then there's that fine line of like head in the sand versus, you know, it's not head in the sand, but it's also what is my energy contributing to and
Exactly.
building and yeah, it's none of it's black and white, and and I think that's part of what's happening right now is there's a lot of like individual discernment that needs to be happening about all of it, and there's no one right way to show up. It's everyone having their different roles to play and their different lessons to learn.
Right. And we're human, so we have the ups and the downs, it goes like that. We can't always be, in the blissful state. Um, and it is important when you're going down to feel that energy, to acknowledge it. We can't just, like you say, put your head in the sand. It's like, yes, acknowledge it, but don't let it pull you down the drain. Just kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I feel that. But then if you can remember, my magic cure is always gratitude, you know, to choose to think of something to be grateful for, because there's always something. I mean, it might be really small, but again, if you start looking for things to be grateful for, then your energy raises and you attract more things to be grateful for.
Mm.
So it's kind of the magical cure if you can remember that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what about Mars moving into Aries? And people, especially, anyone that knows astrology would be like, ooh, Like,
Yeah.
okay, Mars has been in Pisces and we've had all this stuff. Mars is going to Aries, like kind of like an uh-oh sort of energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think about that? And how do we, again, um, stay in an empowered place around what that could or might bring?
Yeah. Well, because I've been looking at that going, oh my God, you know, and this morning I woke up and I had this vision of Mars and Neptune together. I'm a zero Aries, but I have 3 planets in Pisces. So I know those energies because they're not compatible necessarily. And I got this picture of like this little kid, maybe kind of like a bully kid, kind of, like but he's conferring with like a minister or somebody, a spiritual wisdom being. And they're talking to each other, and because they're both in Pisces right now, of course. And it's kind of like my hope is, and I have been accused of being a Pollyanna, but my hope is that Mars is getting some wisdom from a higher source. And perhaps when he goes into Aries, he doesn't go in from a raw, primal, kind of Marsy way, but he goes in with a little wisdom or a little bit of um, compassion and a bigger picture of what's really going on, and it just doesn't come in from that raw Aries state. And that made me feel better because otherwise I got afraid to think about on the 27th Mars goes into Aries, like, it's like, oh my gosh, what can happen then? But again, going back to I'm feeding that fear, then when this picture came in, I thought, oh, because each sign before prepares for the next sign, right?
Mm.
And so why not from Pisces to Aries? It doesn't have to come in, you know, as just plain Aries or Mars, you know.
Yeah. Well, also, one thing that Rick Levine brought up last week is that it's often forgotten that Mars is the warrior, but also the lover. And so when what you described, it's like, well, yeah, and then it could be a quote unquote war energy warrior for love, potentially. That could be what that's bringing in
Right.
is
It could feed this whole revolution around equality.
right.
That Mars comes in with that intention, and so it could spark that. I don't know, but I rather hold on to that picture than something else.
Right. Well, and
Yeah,
it's important that we hold on to those kinds of pictures right now.
yeah.
Yeah. um,
So,
you are going to be our inner circle guide starting in July.
mhm.
Tell us a little bit about the mastery class that you're going to be teaching because I'm very excited about it. I have been excited about it since we talked about it back in whenever we did last year.
Okay.
If you can just describe a little bit what you're going to be teaching.
Yes, I'm going to be teaching how to approach a chart from just step by step, kind of a recipe. Um, and I like to teach astrology from not just an intellectual way, but through pictures and stories and analogies and metaphors to kind of give people a sense of astrology more from a visceral place. And it's kind of how I talk to my clients when I explain, because I'm one of those astrologers that like my clients to understand what I'm talking about and to show them what I'm doing so that they don't think I'm just making this up. And so, I know there's astrologers that never use an astrologies. They don't, but I like to bring my clients along with me. So I've come up with ways to explain things that make it easy for them to understand. So, so that's how my presentation is laid out with pictures and different ways of getting astrology from more of an energetic, from a visceral place than just understanding the adjectives. So I try to take it more into, I call it bringing your chart to life, because it's it's like breathing energy into the chart, but it's also how do we make this useful for everybody? And it's not just, you have to learn the language and so forth.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. Well, and I know so many people sit down and look at a chart and it's like, oh my God, what do I do with this? Where do I start? What's important? How do I break it down and actually create a story out of all these images and symbols and positions, etc.
yeah, yeah. So it's like it goes from the macro to the micro, as we go. Yeah. And so, and you see where each little piece gives you information. So, yeah, I did a version of it for the Vancouver group, and I got some really positive feedback. And I realized that that's kind of my specialty. Is I think it's a zero Aries thing. It's like make it really simple where a child could understand it.
Mm.
Because it can get really really heady.
Mm-hmm.
So
And overwhelming, and tons of people get turned off from astrology. They come in with the enthusiasm, but then
mhm.
they start looking at it and it's like, oh my God, I'll never be able to get this. So that's really a gift to be able to make it simple. I mean, it's really a gift, and I'm so grateful you're going to be teaching our community how to do it. It's
Thank you. I'm
awesome.
excited to be able to share it.
Yeah. So, and then everybody, Linda is also going to be part of our solstice panel that's happening on June 17th. So, this big solstice event that is happening, which is also an eclipse, we're bringing 7 different astrologers together to talk about not only the message or invitation of the solstice eclipse, but then also what we can look forward to in terms of the rest of the year and transits and things that are going to be happening. And then as part of that, we're also going to be doing a ceremony on the actual day of the solstice, which is the 20th. And that event is free. And Linda will be one of our 7 amazing astrologers featured during that event. If you'd like to join us for it, you can go to astrologyhub.com/solstice. That's astrologyhub.com/solstice and sign up and reserve your free spot. We'll make sure that you know how to get to the event itself on the 17th, and then also to the ceremony on the 20th. So, Linda, is there anything else you'd want to leave the audience with? Anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
No, I think it's just be grateful, be kind and loving. Yes. And it's to yourself, not just, we forget sometimes ourselves, but loving and kind to others, but to really acknowledge who you are and to love yourself. Yeah.
We'd have a very different world if we all just did those 2 simple things. So it's big work, big work. Linda, thank you so much for being with us. I can't wait to connect with you again. Is that next week? It is next week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to do that with you next week. And
At least the time is zooming by.
oh my gosh, it's like being in a complete time warp. It's like everything's happening and it's happening so fast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much
So,
for joining
thank
us.
you, Amanda.
All right, we'll
Great.
see you again next week. And thanks everybody for joining. We'd love to see you at that solstice event. It's astrologyhub.com/solstice. And it's free and available and happening next week. We'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.